Welcome to our, I think this is our third local land lesson for dairy. I recognize some of the faces, some faces are new, so I'll tell you a little bit about ourselves for those who haven't been here before. My name is Jennifer Bach. I'm the program assistant for Hudson Valley AgriBusiness Development Corp., HVADC for short. We are a nonprofit organization started in 2007 and are the regional leader of agriculture development while striving to enhance the vital connection for a broad range of farms and food producers via economic development and as a point of connection for resources across the region. Had that written down so I could tell you exactly what we do, make it a little clearer. We have several programs that are helpful for the local farmers and producers in the area. We have our Incubator Without Walls program, where, say for example, if you're looking to do business planning or apply for a grant or need assistance in that ilk, you would fill out our intake form, meet with the staff. It's individualized, personalized, with your own schedule. So if it takes you, say, 6 months to do what you need to do, it takes you 2 months, 2 weeks, it's completely in line with your schedule. We also have what was formerly the Farm and Food Business Accelerator. It's recently been changed to the Farm and Food Finance Accelerator. That was started in 2016. That is simply very similar to a college semester. There's a curriculum, there are several people in the group, just like a class. You can throw ideas back and forth, you can get input from the other producers. If it's a bigger producer and you're not, they may be able to help you out with something that you've been looking for information on, and basically be able to help develop the necessary skills and materials for you to succeed, be it farm, producer, whatever your business. We also have totally free for the farmers and producers. It's called Hudson Valley Bounty, and you can go to our website, enter in your information. It gets uploaded to a database for the Hudson Valley, where if someone's coming to the area and they're looking for milk producers or they're looking for lavender farmers, they can go in there, search it. It's a comprehensive database. It's completely free to you, and it gives more exposure, more access to you. Along with that, we have a farmer newsletter that comes out that you get weekly grant information, workshops, announcements, programs like this that we're putting on, that's in there as well. I believe most of you signed up to receive that when you registered for the class, but if you didn't and you'd like to, just let me know, shoot me an email, or go to our website and sign up and we can do that. I will ask that if any of you have any questions, in order so it's picked up on the video, just speak up. When you're speaking to the presenters, they'll have the microphone here. I'm going to, if you don't have any questions for me, I'm going to turn it over to Nico and Louis and let them take it away.
Thank you, and also thank you very much for inviting us, and thank you all for being here. My name is Nico. I'm originally from Germany, and that's where I, about a decade ago, started to work with sheep. So I herded sheep for 3 years in Germany, and then and that means in Germany that I actually learned a craft. So I went to school for sheep husbandry and sheep breeding and sheep flock management. And after that education, basically I went to college, got my undergraduate degree in animal science and agricultural management, had a brief stint in whole farm consulting and a brief stint in dairy cow management. I managed a 350 cow dairy for about a year. After that, I realized that I really want to work with sheep. That's my passion, and I came to Cornell and started my master's degree in the lab of Dr. Mike Tony in the animal science department at Cornell, and I am working on nutrition and management for milking sheep in short and frequent lactation. And I will elaborate a little bit more about my research later in my presentation. And I think the way we have talked about structuring this evening, I'm going to start out. After Louis introduced himself, I'm going to start out and give the first presentation for maybe about an hour and 15 minutes, and I would definitely invite you and encourage you to interrupt and ask any questions that you might have throughout the presentation. Then maybe we can take a little break and eat something and talk to each other. And then Louis is going to continue with the second presentation.
My name is Louis Fox. I grew up in Vermont on a dairy farm, organic dairy, and I came to New York to go to Cornell. I graduated out of there in 2014, after which moved to Western New York out by Niagara Falls, and I was a manager on a 2,000 cow dairy out there, which I did for about 2 years. I moved back to the Finger Lakes to work for a professor of mine who bought the sheep flock from Old Chatham Sheep at the creamery up in Old Chatham. And so I managed that dairy for about 1.5 years until this past August, when I moved to Old Chatham to be the general manager of the creamery. And so I've been doing that since then. And I'm actually soon to be moving on from there and then starting a grass-fed laying business. So that's my next venture, and it's still in the sheep field. So I'm pretty excited to be here to talk about sheep dairy, which is a pretty interesting business. And it's one that's definitely still in its infancy in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of potential there. So some different challenges. So there's a lot to talk about. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Okay. See if I'm able to coordinate all this. All right, since we're such a relatively small group, we thought it might be great if each of you would maybe say a couple of sentences about your business and what's the current structure of your business. Do you have sheep? Do you milk sheep? Are you planning on doing so? What are the future plans? What are like the main things you would like to get out of this workshop? And what do you consider to be your biggest challenge? Yeah, should we pass the mic? Does anyone want to start maybe?
My name is Kate Wilson, and I'm hoping in the future to do something with sheep. We don't know yet. We don't have a sheep sex. I'm actually working for a system.
Okay.
We're going to be putting our sheep liberates on my father's farm. We're actually taking over and use the sheep as feed management. So we're going to do something else with the meat or barrier or fiber. We don't know yet. So we're just taking these classes to kind of understand each segment of keeping sheep and what it might be used as.
I don't currently have sheep. I'm just interested in learning about the possibilities of sheep dairy. Actually, that was possible until recently.
My name is Gus Beth. I'm currently doing sheep jobs. I have to work with meat sheep, so I don't know more about there.
I'm Mary Ann Johnson, and I am Deputy Director of Hudson Valley AgriBusiness Development Corporation, and I'm just here tonight to say hi to all of you, and thank you for coming, and thank you to our presenters. Enjoy your evening.
My name is Jason Detzel. I'm an educator, livestock educator in Ulster County, and my job is to make farmers money. And I'm here to learn how to do that with sheep dairies.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Farber. I'm a landscape architect and a farmer over in Greene County across the river. I have 180 acres there, and I manage a 400-acre farm in Rhinebeck, and I'm interested in learning about sheep.
Great. Cool. Thank you. All right, well, I guess just going to start. We're going to talk today a little bit about breeds and breed considerations. What works for dairy, what doesn't work, etc. We're going to talk a little bit about different management strategies, and we're going to really hone in and focus on year-round dairying versus traditional seasonal dairying. And we're going to talk about reproduction, nutrition, a little bit about marketing, and economics. And I also compiled a pretty good literature summary for you guys to learn more and get a little bit of deeper insight in each of these different points right here. Okay, brief introduction. This right here is basically the import structure of sheep milk cheese to the US. So the US is the single most importer of sheep dairy products in the world, with annual 50 to 60% of the world exports. So everything that the world produces in sheep dairy products, 50% of that to 60% of that gets imported to the US.
Where does it come from?
Greece, Spain, mainly Europe, Israel,
Okay.
like that whole area, right? But again, it's a huge number, and we can see right here that not only the import amounts, but also the import value has been constantly on rise since the 80s, and this ends in 2007. The newest number here is from 2015, 53 million pounds imported sheep milk cheese, according to FAO stats, and that's a raw milk equivalent of 270 million pounds. That is a lot. And again, 50 to 60% of the annual world exports. So the demand is rising.
Is that soft cheese or hard cheese?
Mostly hard cheeses. Manchego, for example, pecorino, these cheeses, mostly hard cheese. And then there's also feta, fresh feta, mainly from Greece, actually, and yeah, mainly hard cheeses. And if we think about hard cheeses, we think about a cheese yield of 18 to 25%, right? And that's where that raw milk equivalent is coming from. Sheep milk compared to goat and cow's milk has a very high content of solids, so 17.5%, right? That's more than these two, and that means that more cheese can be made out of sheep milk than can be made out of cow's milk or goat's milk. So that's why the raw milk equivalent here is pretty high. Okay, so this is just like as an introduction, planning with goals in mind. So obviously, if in the future there is supposed to be a farm operation, a dairy or meat, doesn't really matter. The first thing to think about is, what are my goals? Do I want to have a hobby farm? Do I want to have a second income? Do I want to support my like spouse or friend or whatever? Or do I want to actually have full income? Do I want to support my whole family off that farm? This is the single most question that everyone should ask themselves when they are moving their operation from a hobby farm to a second income or to full income, or if they are thinking about starting a farm. And then obviously, when we're talking about dairy, the question is, do I only want to do milk, or do I also want to shear my sheep and sell the wool, and do I also want to sell meat? And that's actually a pretty important question to ask, because if it's only milk, then the breed likely is going to be a dairy sheep breed. But if I want to have a dual purpose, right? If I also want to sell meat, for example, I would rather go for a mixed breed to make sure that the litter sizes are high, that the carcass quality is high, right? So that's an important consideration to make as well, because it has influences on my investment on the kind of breed of sheep that I would buy for my farm. And then obviously, do I want to have a grass-fed, a organic, or a conventional farm? So this is the first assessment. What are my goals? What do I want? Depending on those, very important, how many animals are needed to achieve that goal? How many lambs do I have to sell? How much milk do I have to sell to support my spouse with a second income, right? And how much product is supposed to be sold, and with which breed am I going to achieve that? Obviously, the animal number has a huge impact on my facilities, my equipment, and feed that I'll have to buy or make, and also time and labor. Of course, if I milk 50 sheep, it's not going to be as labor intensive as if I decide to move those 50 sheep to a 150 sheep operation. And a very, very important question here is, how many family members are willing and able to support that? Will I have to hire labor? What is the threshold in my business, like in my environment? What's the threshold to move it from family labor towards hired labor? Like, how many animals, again, do I have to sell, or how much milk do I have to sell to be able to afford hired labor? That's a very important question. And then all of this influences the time frame. What kind of management, what kind of system, where are my buyers, how long can it actually take me? Like, what's my courtesy time that I have until I have to have cash flow? Until when do I have to make money with this business? Can I go for a year? Can I go for 2 years? Or do I have to make money right away? Right? The time frame of all of that is very important. And then also, if you move from a hobby farm, you likely have 10 ewes, right? Are you going to try and breed until you get up to your desired 50, or are you going to buy in? Like, are you going to buy animals, or are you going to breed? Are you going to put up with the biosecurity, right, having to buy in, or are you going to put up with the time it takes to breed from your own flock? What kind of brands are you going to buy? That's also a very important question. How are you going to elevate your business to higher numbers? Are you going to buy? Are you going to breed? Okay. For me personally, breeding is a very, very important consideration. Right? There is no perfect breed out there. Like, no one perfect purebred sheep will manage to fulfill all the things that you want out of it, right? Or maybe there is, but much more important than the perfect breed is to make sound and smart breeding decisions. Right? So the question is, which traits of sheep, like what kind of traits do these sheep have to have that fit my system and that fit my environment? Do I want to mainly graze? Do I want to grain them? That's a very important consideration, right? If I want to grain, I want to do meat, I would likely go maybe for a Suffolk breed. If I do not want to grain my animals, hog might be good because they do well outside year-round. You can do grass-fed with hogs. You'll have a harder time to do grass-fed with a fed sheep. Those are considerations. Which traits fit best into the system and into the environment of the farm? And then gatless record keeping. Right? So you have your flock, and there's going to be variation. Not every animal in that flock will do well. There's going to be animals that won't do well, and then there's going to be outlier animals that do exceedingly well. There's going to be variation. If there's no spotless and gatless record keeping, it's going to be very hard to keep track of those animals. And essentially, what everyone wants is like to have a lot of the outlier animals that are doing exceedingly well. Okay, so record keeping, and that starts with a permanent ID that never changes throughout the lifespan of the animal, or if it changes, the change needs to be recorded. Like right here, for example, that same animal has 3 different tags throughout its lifetime, right? The weight should be recorded, the sex, obviously, and then sire, ear tags, permanent IDs. Also, very helpful is that animal that I'm looking at, is it born as a triplet, is it born as a twin, is it born as a singleton? There's another consideration. If you want to have a grass-fed business, and if you want to have them outside year-round, you might want them to only have singles, right? Because you might know that they don't do well without grain, and they might not be able to support their triplets. So you would end up with a ewe that has triplets, but the ewe can't support these 3 lambs. So you end up bottle feeding 2. So it might be good if they only have a small litter. Okay? But if you're out to grain them a lot and make a lot of money off their meat, you might want to have triplets. Right? So recording that is very important because the heritability of litter size is very high. What do I mean by that? If I keep a lamb that was born as a triplet, the chance of that lamb having another set of triplet is very high. The heritability is very high of litter size. So it's worth recording that, and it's worth keeping the lambs that are coming out of a litter size that we decide.
Can you speak on the economics of bottle raising versus?
Yes,
Okay.
I will get to that, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, another,
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
too?
sure.
Is there a software that has that landing record that we're looking at there? Is that off of something that you set up, or is there a standard?
this actually can be found on the Cornell sheep website, and that is on your last page of that presentation. There's a link to a website, and that's it there. So there's a feed form program where you can formulate your rations, and there's also a basic record keeping program detail. It's all access-based, so you would have to get access to that database software, but yeah, that's definitely available for that. And there's also apps out there. So there's phone apps for iPhone and livestock keeping apps out there, so that's relatively easy. There's a lot of technology which supports correct keeping. Okay, for me, this is sort of like a little bit my pet peeve. That's why I always bring it up. Body, skeleton, right? And here, feet are very important if you have a grazing business, right? An animal that doesn't have a correct skeleton will not be able to move as well as an animal with like straight legs and straight feet. Examples for that is this is how a sheep from behind should look like. This is not good because the bone structure isn't right. They sink in, that will have detrimental effects on their feet and will entail more hoof trimming. This is also not good because it has the same detrimental effects on the feet and then the hind legs. Yeah, this is sort of like the optimal appearance of skeleton for the standing of a sheep. And right here, this is very important. Sadly, in the Cornell flock, we have a lot of this right here. So they go down very, very far with their heel, and that means that they just have a hard time walking if they have to walk a lot. So this is very important. In my opinion, if you have a grazing operation where they have to walk to get to the water, where they have to walk to get to the barn, where they don't get to just lay all day, to really pay attention that your skeleton is straight and as it should be. And the same goes for their mouth and the teeth. An animal that has a mouth like this or like that will not have a high intake, right? Like an animal that looks like this will always eat more than this or than that. And actually, like there's research out there, there's like the impact on feed intake is quite high. And you want them to eat a lot because you want them to be very productive. So you get a lot of milk or have a lot, right? So that right here is important for the still shed issues. The still shed is when they have a very hard time lambing and need help lambing, and the lambs get stuck in the womb or stuck in the birthing channels. A hip that is like slightly tilted upwards, or a back that goes like this. Animals that show these traits have a harder time lambing alone. And you want them always to lamb alone because during lambing, that's a very labor-intensive time, right? If you have to basically be in the barn for 24 hours to pay attention that they get their lambs out alone, and that's a lot of work. So you want to be able to set them up that they will really like perform well. And here again is the hip. This is how it's supposed to be like here. I would definitely record this, and I would select on these traits. Other traits are, or other things to consider is ease of climbing, collar or spotting if you're interested in that, and then also, yeah, we went over better size milk production, desired and so those are just examples of what could be included in a gapless rendering. Okay, why am I bringing this up? Why am I saying this? Because right here, this is a slide from the Schooner Agricultural Research Station that's sadly getting closed last year. It was the #1 or the only dairy sheep research program in the U.S. The only university in the U.S. that actually had a dairy sheep research program was located in Wisconsin. The head was Dr. Dave Thomas. He retired. With his retirement last year, they closed down the whole research station. So as of right now, there's no dairy research program in the U.S. And what he did is he imported the first East Frisian Lacan dairy sheep breed genetics to the U.S. from Canada and from Europe. And that was in the 90s. And then he recorded milk yields, and he made very, very good breeding decisions. And we can observe here that the milk yields in pounds per ewe over the years increased very, very much. And the same goes for the U.S. Right? So the milk yield compared to when they started out with to almost when they ended was a very, very high increase. And that is definitely due to their smart breeding decisions. So being able to decide at any given time point which animal is worth keeping and which isn't worth keeping can have an effect like that. And they move from 250 pounds per year for you to almost, almost 90. So breeding considerations are okay. Dairy sheep breeds. There's 2 dairy sheep breeds in the U.S. They were imported, as I just said, around 20 to 30 years ago. They're not purebred per se, right? Because they came here, 5 or 3 families, I think 5 Frisian families, and then 3 Lacan brands came here, and everything that happened in terms of breeding happened with these few families or a few genetics. So there's a lot of inbreeding, and there's also a lot of crossbreeding that happened. So if you read today a U.S. East Frisian or a U.S. Lacan, it does not mean that they're purebred as they were bred in Europe. Right? Yeah, exactly. Very important. There's import restrictions. Like you cannot, as of right now, you cannot import semen. You can't import live rams or live genetics to the U.S. The import restrictions are so stringent that we can only work with what we have here. What we have here is not purebred, right? Or to a very few percentage purebred. They all range, I would say, from maybe 80% to 95%. That's the percentage. However, they are still called East Frisian and Lacan, rightfully so, right? And they differ in traits. If we look at lactation lengths, East Frisian lactates around 160 days, the Lacan around 155 days. In that period of time, they give 209 versus 194 kilograms of milk in that lactation period, and 96 lambs, 96% versus 94% of the exposed ewes actually lamb, so that's a very good trait that they have, and per lambing, 1.85 to 1.69 lambs are born, so that right here is the litter size. So again, the East Frisians are slightly better than the Lacans, and those lambs that are born weigh 5 kilograms for East Frisian and then 4 kilograms for Frisian. And then our weaned is pretty much about the same weight. So we'll see that the 2 main things, or the 2 things to pay attention to, is lactation length. How long will they actually uphold their lactation, right? And how much are they making in that time? So milk yield, these 2 are very important. Obviously, if you think about a dairy operation, then as we can see here or observe here, the East Frisian does slightly better. Okay, so right now, I would like to just draw a quick picture and compare beef breeds to dairy breeds, right? The lactation curve of dairy sheep looks something like this and goes to, let's say, 170 days, right? They land right here. They peak in the first 30 days, and then they uphold their lactation curve to a pretty high level throughout their lactation until, let's say, 170 days, or sometimes even 210 days. That varies, right? So this is a typical, obviously a sketch, but yet a typical dairy sheep lactation curve. A meat sheep lactation curve looks like this. They peak higher in comparison. And the dairy sheep over here, so their peak is also happening in the first 30 days, but they peak higher, and their total lactation length lasts, I would say, maximum 90 days. Why? Because in the meat sheep operation, after 90 days, the lambs are weaned, and there's no use for making milk, right? So these are 2 fundamental differences, but there's another one. Dairy sheep breeds like the East Frisian or the Lacan are seasonal polyesters. So they're seasonal breeders. And meat sheep are, if we look at the Dorset or the foot sheep, they breed year-round. So they can come in heat year-round. So you can breed them in June, you can breed them in August, you can breed them in January, they can lamb year-round. Dairy sheep, however, have a really hard time coming into heat, let's say, in June. June is as much, or is the most out of season as it gets, right? June is really out of season. Usually they breed in fall, and then they lamb in April. You'll see that again later on. But that's like the two main differences between meat sheep and dairy sheep. Seasonal breeding versus aseasonal breeding, and the shape and persistency of the lactation where we're basically focusing on moving sheep dairy production from a traditional seasonal business to a year-round business. We did a farm study because we were interested in, how does the milk composition, how does the lactation curve and actual farm setting, how do the genetics of those sheep affect lactation curve and milk components, right? So what we did is we went to a farm that did not know about their grade composition, right? That farm that we did this research in, there were big question marks as of, are those meat sheep, are those dairy sheep, to what extent are they dairy sheep, what is the grade composition, right? And we basically sampled 25 ewes at that farm, and their blood was tested with genomics, and that blood was cross-referenced with reference breeds. And those reference breeds were the Lacan breed, right here, the Frisian breed in blue, and then the Finch sheep breed right here in orange, and the Dorset breed, the Frisian is gray, and the Dorset is blue. And the sheep that we tested, those 25 ewes, they were right here. Right? So we can see that they're mixed out of these 4 breeds. And they're about, I would say, 57 on average, 57% dairy. And the rest was meat, right? So that's a dairy operation. They milk sheep every day. They milk year-round, which was also very interesting for us because they milk year-round, and they did not know the breed composition. So we tested their blood, and the result was they're 57% on average dairy sheep. So we then went ahead and categorized them in 2 groups. Low dairy percentage and high dairy percentage, right? And this is the outcome. We also took milk yields from them. We sampled them every week for the first month, and then every 2 weeks until we reached 160 days. So we went out there, we looked at our 25 ewes, and we weighed the milk and looked how much milk are they actually making and how long are they actually milking. And the outcome is pretty surprising, right? Everyone thinks if I want to do sheep dairy, I definitely dairy sheep, meat sheep are for beef production, dairy sheep are for dairy production. However, in the study, the result was that the low group that was below 57% East Frisian or Lacan actually had that higher peak that I showed you right here, right? That is according to literature, so they give more at the beginning of lactation. But then they also had an overall higher milk yield in that lactation than the actual dairy sheep with the 57% and higher, right? Just as a reminder, as of right now, there's no 100% purebred baby dairy sheep population, East Frisian or Lacan in the US, right? So they're all mixed a little bit because they all resulted from crossbreeding. So this result is actually interesting. Right now, that doesn't mean a whole lot because the sample size was low, right? And we didn't sample obviously all of the sheep that were out there, but it is an example for how crossbreeding with meat sheep genetics can do good. So if one is thinking about starting a sheep dairy production or a sheep dairy farm and wants to not only milk seasonal, 160 days per year, right, but wants to milk year-round, it might make sense to take feed sheep that are aseasonal breeders that can come into feed year-round, crossbreed with those, and then achieve a higher peak milk yield in the beginning and a longer persistency.
Now, I have a question,
Sense?
sorry.
Yes, please.
Okay, so that, can we say, how certain can we say that that's from crossbreeding or for selecting for high milk production within the herd?
Good point. Right now, as I said, 25 ewes, this is the beginning of a research, of a body of research, right? Right now, we can't say that for certain. But this is according to textbook, right? What happens here is all over the literature. So I would say that it does mean something. It's not 100% certain, but it definitely is a direction. And if we're like, I mean, sheep dairying right now has a problem that it is seasonal. Right? So there's not a lot of raw milk markets out there because you can't continuously year-round sell fresh raw milk. So no creamery is saying, oh, I'm going to buy your milk because you can only give them milk for half the year, right? So in order to actually achieve a functioning raw milk market, something needs to happen. And we at Cornell, like in our research group, we believe that what needs to happen is that, it moves from a traditional seasonal production to a year-round production.
So your question was whether that was due to breed composition or the breeding decisions made on the
If I'm
farm?
going to tell someone how to increase their milk production, would I say you should be crossbreeding possibly dairy and milk, or would I say you should be selecting within your herd?
So those two groups of sheep were, they had the same breeding decision. That was our dairy. And
Okay.
So they were both having the same breeding decisions made on.
Well, you didn't differentiate between those groups. Those were differentiated by your study, right? So there's no difference between the herd.
No, there isn't.
It's 50%, but you couldn't tell the difference when you're looking at them. So you guys were just selecting for amount of milk production.
This was just a random group of sheep.
Absolutely
Okay.
random, because the breed composition was unknown. And
Okay.
this was somewhat surprising to us because we did not expect to get a textbook result.
Okay.
Right? And since it is a textbook result and there's a really high significance, like the p-values are, I don't know, that's but this is,
Okay. No, I was wondering what the recommendation is. So is it to,
I'll get to that.
okay.
I'll get to that. And no, the recommendation as of right now is not for every farm in every setting, in every environment, you need to crossbreed. But the recommendation is to look into that and to make the decision, do I want to milk year-round? Do I have the labor available? Do I have the setting in my environment available to even think about that, right? But if I do, then it might be a good idea, yes, to crossbreed. And we are actually right now designing a new experiment where we are doing that exact thing. We have the Cornell flock and we're crossbreeding with Screech genetics, and then we're going to milk them and we're going to see what kind of impact that actually has on the lactation mix and persistency and how much of that seasonal breeding ability is going to be taken. Yes.
Can you just talk briefly about the different flocks at Cornell? Do you have meat flock and dairy flock? And are there...
So Cornell, the big Cornell flock consisted of 600 meat ewes, and they were a Dorset Finn sheep crossbreed or crossbred flock, and that flock was sold 2015, just before I started, and we are now milking the remainder of that flock. We have around 50 ewes. So we have one flock, and it's right now only dairy because I milk them year round. So right now, those meat ewes are a dairy flock because, they're making meat in terms of we sell their lambs, but we also milk them 365
I don't know, is there any dairy, is there dairy mixed in with there, or there's
No, right
Okay.
now they're only meat, and in about a year they will be lambing again, and they have been crossbred with Screech genetics, and we will start milking them next February.
So that's your
Then I
genetics,
can, and then I can elaborate more on that. But for right now, this is a pretty good result, and it is definitely worth thinking about that if you think about it. We also tested the milk components because the question was obviously like, what happens to the milk if it comes from a dairy sheep or from a meat sheep? Like, does it differ? Is it the same? How does it differ if it differs? And the outcome is that there's no detectable difference between the components, and by that I mean protein, fat, lactable solids, fatty acids, etc. So there's no. We have here the group with low dairy genetics and high dairy genetics, so we can see that they basically cluster around pretty much the same lines. So again, there's no difference detectable in quality of milk from meat versus dairy sheep. And this right here is for fat, and we also did that for protein. We did it for lactose, for fatty acids. I just have up here fat and protein. Again, there's no detectable difference. Both milks from both breed angles are the same. Okay. I said that, right, that up here, traditional dairy system, right? They're being bred in November because that's when they are coming into meat because they're seasonal breeders. Breeding happens in November around Thanksgiving. And then they're dry and pregnant throughout the winter. And then they lamb in March. So there's no fresh milk available all winter long. Rebreeding happens around 219 days after lambing. So if they lamb right here, they're being rebred 219 days after that. And that's basically the time they're being. We have a 365-day lambing interval, and we have 1 lambing per ewe per year. And that also means 1 lambing every 365 days per year per flock, right? So that's the traditional system with here the curve, like a lower peak and a higher system. The accelerated system is adapted from meat sheep operations, right? So we're now having 3 different lambings per year. We have 3 lambing periods per year. So I color-coded this here a little bit. Have breeding in January for the green group, that group lambs in June, and then the lambs are weaned in August, I think. And this is the meat sheep system, right? We're not in dairy right now. This right here is meat. This is how accelerated lambing works in meat sheep operations. Breeding in January, lambing in June, weaning in August. For the green group, for the red group, we would breed in May, lamb in October, and then take the lambs away in December. And then we have a blue group, breeding in September, lambing in February, lactating in February, and then in April, the lambs will be weaned, right? So in every sheep like that, lambs 3 times in 2 years. Okay, so that's the accelerated step. I don't have only 1 lambing per year. I have 1.5 lambings per year. And I have 3 lambings in 2 years. So it's an accelerated lambing scale. And that is adapted for meat sheep operations. What is required is a higher ability to breed out of season. And the advantage, again, taken from that will be year-round availability of milk. Okay. And this is how it could look like in an actual dairy operation. I have my group 1, my group 2, my group 3, lambing one after the other throughout the year. They go from being milked 3 months and then being milked and bred simultaneously. Right? That's possible. It's just like for cows, you can breed while they're still milking. And then they're dry for 4 months and then being pregnant, and then they lamb again, milk again, being bred, right? So again, milk production, 1, group 2, 3 throughout the group. Milk available. And here it's slightly more accelerated. Breeding starts at 98 days after lambing. That gives us a 244-day lambing interval instead of 365-day lambing interval. It's 1.5 lambings per ewe in 1 year, 3 lambings per ewe in 2 years, and 3 lambings per flock for every 122 days per year. Considerations over considerations. Is the labor available? Does everyone feel like lambing 3 times a year? Certainly not. I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of people out there who say once a year is absolutely enough. Why would I put myself through doing like 3 times a year, right? Those are considerations. What do I want? Where do I want to get it? How much money do I want? Also, how big is the flock? I mean, if you're milking 10 ewes, this likely won't be an option, right? But if you're thinking about maybe having or milking 100 ewes, that might very well be an option. Because there's also a difference if you stagger it, right? If you milk 30 ewes a day at a time, or if you milk 100 ewes. So it also has implications on equipment, for example. And I mean, I gather that you, for example, right? If you graze your solar fields and you're not sure if you are going to milk or not, this is also obviously it is derived from the meat sheep production. This can be done without milking. So that milking accelerated system is adapted from meat sheep in the exposed ways. And then now just a little bit about my research. This is what I do. I milk sheep on the STAR accelerated lambing system. So we're now doing it a little bit more intensely. We are rebreeding on day 73 of each lactation. We have a 219-day lambing interval as opposed to 244 days accelerated and 365 traditional system. We have 1.67 lambings per ewe, 5 lambings per ewe in 3 years, and 5 lambings per ewe. So right now we are in January. We're milking the group that lambed in January. We're going to milk them until March. In March, they're going to be dried off at around 73 days. and then you're going to milk the next group, and so on and so forth. Okay? Yes.
This could be a yes or no. Your feed needs are way higher.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay, so,
Because that's going to be an economic drain on you.
yeah, but, all right, okay. I get that question every
I
time.
don't mind
and
if it's a drain, I just want to know.
But, in that system, all right, we milk every sheep, 73, 140 days, right? 140 days per year, every year, 140 days. In the traditional system, the ewe gets milked 160 days. So you have 144 versus 160 days of elevated feed costs of feeding them grain. The rest of their time, when they're dry, when they're gestating, they can be on pasture. How expensive is pasture? Not that expensive, right? So yes, you're technically only milking a third of the flock at a time, and the other 2/3 are just hanging out. But that's the same in the traditional system as well, because you're not milking them for 6 months of the year as well. So there is not that much of a difference, because sheep, if they're managed right, and if they're treated well, and if they're taken care well, do insanely well in pasture. And pasture can be an incredibly great feed for a very low price. And I'll get to the whole grazing issue on that a little later, but yes.
I was just gonna make the point that, I mean, your lactating feed is marginal cost. So if you're making money milking sheep, you're gonna make more money if you're milking for a great part of the year, because your total milk production per ewe is gonna be significantly higher in this system. You're gonna have a year-round income. If you're not making money being lactating sheep, you're not gonna be making money doing it for 190 days a year or 365. I mean, that's a...
Are there any commercial star systems in this, in New York State?
Meat sheep, yes.
No, for their,
Not for their, I mean, again, like, so,
We
yes.
had, it wasn't disorganized, but we basically did the same thing as Children's Way, and that's the only way we could do business. You know, because we had a lot of, I mean, we had, you know, a dozen people on payroll, and we had a lot of investment, and we had to milk year round. I mean, if somebody, if this isn't your full-time income, or even if it is, I mean, depending on how your business is set up, you don't need to milk year round, but there's a lot of benefits that come with it, you know.
and one of the benefits that we're seeing is the raw milk market. Because again, which creamery will purchase your milk if you can only bring them milk 6 months of the year? They need separate fats, they need separate equipment, they're likely going to make different cheeses, they're going to make yogurt, right? They can only run their equipment to capacity if you can provide them milk year round. And that is like where I personally, and also like Cornell and you, I think everyone sees the problem right now. There's so many producers here in the Northeast that would love to milk sheep. And there is the market, like this, you know, the product gets sold in the city, it gets sold in hubs like Ithaca. There's also like great success stories with sheep milk product, right? But the link in the middle, the raw milk market, like detaching production from processing, that's missing. But year-round production could be a first step.
Can I ask you something
Yes.
about the star system?
Yes.
Or annexing this one star?
Wait, can you just talk a little bit louder so we can hear
Yeah, so
you?
is there an actual effect on the health of the ewes?
Great question. Is there an effect on the health of the ewes? I've been doing this for 2 years now. They are in their third lactation on that system right now. They're healthy and they're rising in milk. We're making so much more milk now than we have in the first round. That no, we're not seeing any. We're having 50 sheep and we're not seeing any negative effects on health.
What about general lifespan?
General lifespan, there's a lot of people who, especially in Europe, who have accelerated systems in meat production, and there is no, if managed right, if managed correctly, there's no shortening of the lifespan. If you take out disease out of the equation. I mean, if we look at mastitis, yes, definitely. Like the probability of an animal catching mastitis and having to be terminated is the likelihood of that happening is greater if they land more often. Absolutely. But again, if managed right, we don't see it. Like, we don't see it at all.
So
And that was
apart
a
from
big
the
question.
size, it's not really a big problem.
No, and we had a big question. That was one of our research objectives, what actually happens. And we're not losing body condition score, we're not losing general health. Our lambs are doing really well. So I would say at this point, there's no negative impacts. Okay, lamb rearing. In sheep dairy production, there's 3 different ways to do that. Fully artificial, meaning the lambs get taken away on day 1 of birth, right away, and then are reared with milk replacer and are either fed ad lib, on schedule, with warm or cold milk. Or in a mixed system. That means that the lambs are with their moms for 12 hours of the day, and then overnight are taken away, and the dam gets milk once a day in the morning. That's a mixed system. And that goes on for 30 days until the lambs are weaned. Or there's a 30-day system where the lambs are reared by their dam for 30 days. There's no need for milk replacer, no need for labor that it takes, to artificially rear your lambs. And then the lambs are weaned after 30 days, and after those 30 days, the lambs are being milked. So those are the 3 basic systems. Obviously, artificial rearing is expensive because you will have to buy a milk replacer, and it is labor expensive because every lamb has to be brought to the lamb bar, has to be brought to the artificial rearing system, has to be like used to that, and that takes a while, and then they need like closer attention than as if they would be reared by their dad, right? The mixed system is also labor intensive because they have to be separated twice a day, but it's not as cost intensive because you don't have to buy a milk replacer. And the 30-day system, you don't have to buy a milk replacer as well, at all. I mean, they're completely reared by their dads. However, going back to this, the highest milk yield that is produced by the sheep, like the peak milk yield happens in the first 30 days. And if you, let's say, in 7 years, when there is raw milk markets established in the Northeast, you can sell milk for $1.25 per pound, and you can buy your milk replacer for 70 cents a pound. It's a very easy calculation. You will definitely sell your milk, and you will buy milk replacer, right? Because it's more economical. So what I mean by that, and what I'm saying by that, is it's a consideration, and it's a calculation, and it depends on style. All of this works. Like, we are rearing it completely artificially, and for example, Mary Rose Livingston Emerson at Northland Sheep Dairy, she does this. Right? So
Which one?
Like that one, the 30 days. So she has the lambs with their moms for 30 days, and after that she starts milking them. Sometimes she waits 5 weeks. If she has a party to go to or whatnot, she waits 5 weeks, and then she starts milking.
What do they eat after the 30 days? What are they eating?
Grass. I mean, they're getting used to solid food pretty much on week 1. Like week 1, they should have starter grain or grass available or hay available to eat because their ruminants have to develop. So feeding them solid food should start at the end of week 1. Water, not until the end of week 2. Because if you have a starving one, it will drink water and it will look like it has a full belly and it will die. So no water until the end of week 2, but solid food pretty much right away, yes.
Is the Northland Dairy looking like, how's their lactation curve? Are they
Like this.
They're
They're
looking like that?
having East Frisian dairy sheep, very traditional system. They're breeding in November and they're starting to milk, I think, in April, after they have weaned their lambs.
So that drop off after 30 days is not as intense as...
It's not as intense. But if you have a lot of sheep and you have a bigger operation, I would say that this can be quite this probably could buy you a milk replacer. But again, that's a calculation, and that depends on the setting, it depends on your preference, it depends on the labor you have, it depends on many different things. But I wouldn't per se say that there's an answer to what is the most cost effective.
Can I ask something?
Yes.
How do they get colostrum, the ones in the first version that you take directly?
So some of feed artificial colostrum, we just leave the lamb with the dam for 12 hours in a jug. They get their colostrum. For us, that is less labor intensive, and we make sure that the lamb actually gets colostrum.
We would do that method, and so we would just bring the ewe into the parlor and collect the colostrum, and then we check it on a refractometer, for the level of hemoglobin, and then we commingle it, we mix it to bring the average, because some ewes produce a higher quality colostrum than others, and so we commingle it and then heat it back up and then feed it back to the lamb. So it's much more labor intensive. What's
How
that?
do you feed them at that age? You tube them or?
Not necessarily. They'll drink off of it.
Oh, they'll drink up the bottle.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to do, but not very often. It's a help.
So that's key. They have to be healthy. And then the next, a very important key thing with that is the right kind of nipple. It's that kind of nipple. That works. Everything else is this kind of nipple right here. So I think I have another picture. I'll put it later. So that's important. Never change nipples and have them on there pretty much right away when they're still strong, and never try to get them used to a nipple when they're too big. Did you have a question? Oh, sorry. All right, reproduction. There's different ways to hormonally synchronize estrus. And that means that with different helpers, you can get all of your sheep in heat at pretty much the same time. What does that do? A, it elevates what is it? The number of sheep, the percentage of sheep that actually scan positive, right? Because they will cycle and they will come into estrus and likely they will catch. And it also elevates the number. So when your breeding cycle is 1 month, right? Let's say you breed from January to February, 30 days. One cycle of a ewe is 17 days. So with those 30 days, you have 2 reproductive cycles that you can actually cover. So even if they don't cycle in their first cycle, they might come into heat in the second cycle and then catch, right? They get rebred. So if you have 1 month, you have 2 possible breeding periods. However, to decrease your labor load, what would be the ideal situation? The ideal situation would be that they all get bred, catched, and then lamb within, let's say, a week. Because then you have it over, right? Lambing doesn't drag out. You don't have to do lamb checks, night checks for a month. You only have to do it for 17 days max, okay? So that's a huge consideration. And that is also something that I would breed for. So I would specifically keep lambs from use that lamb in that first cycle and catch in that first cycle. That's a huge consideration because the heritability of that is also, it's high, right? Comparatively, and yeah, it's a huge labor consideration. And here it's just some examples of what we're doing in Cornell. We're using teaser rams. What are teaser rams? Teaser rams are rams that are vasectomized, that are not able to breed, and we put them in with the use prior to breeding, so that they have a first heat synchronization, and that first heat can be silent, right? So they cycle with that ram that is in or unable to actually breed them, all come into cycle together, and then the real rams introduce 17 days later, and they have their second cycle, and they actually are ready to be bred, and they will hatch, right? So 17 days, there's one cycle prior to your actual breeding start, you could introduce a vasectomized ram to get them to cycle together. And then there's also CBERs, those are controlled intrauterine devices that release hormones. They do pretty much the same thing. They synchronize the estrus and they get them to cycle, and the same thing is with sponges. And we can see here, we tried a whole bunch of different combinations. Pretty much everything worked pretty well. We have conception rates ranging from 75 to 100%. Those are just ideas. This is not something to, it doesn't mean that teasers and sponges work the best, right? Our sample size is too small to make that assessment. It's just different techniques that can be tried out to synchronize the estrus. All right. Very briefly on from my personal research, we have 3 different diets. Obviously, one of these diets works the best. This is just to say that that's the kind of impact nutrition actually has in the farm setting or in the simulated farm setting on molecules. You see that those plant A who fed a certain diet had up to 4 pounds or 4.2 pounds of milk per day until day 40, before they sort of trailed off, and the second group only reached around 3.8 pounds per day. Okay? So there's huge differences. Nutrition is very, very important when high milk yields should be like required. All right, so this is just to show you what actually a feed lab does when you send feed for analysis, right? Dairy 1, for example, does feed analysis. There's other labs who do feed analysis. That's a very crucial thing, right? If you feed animals, you want to know what exactly are you feeding them. You want to know what is actually in that feed. So for a very long time, people said that there's food protein, right? And then there is carbohydrates, and then there's fiber. So everyone sort of talked about these 3 compartments, and we still do, but the research has sort of progressed in the past 10 years, and we now know that food protein is actually subdivided in many, many other things. There's ammonia, soluble and insoluble protein, there's fiber-bound protein, indigestible protein, organic acids, and so on and so forth. The same thing goes for the starches and the sugars, and then there's fast digestible fiber and slow digestible fiber. There's also indigestible fiber. So what we talked about here is still accurate, but we now know more. All of these components have impact on how well an animal will do on a certain diet. And I just put that up there because I think it's important when we feed animals and we want them to be productive to actually pay attention to that and to try to understand and actually formulate diets, right? And there's a very good tool that is online, and I have the link in a presentation, and that is called FeedForm. It was developed by my professor, Dr. Tony, and it can be downloaded. It's completely for free. There's a huge feed library online, in that program, and you can actually, there's a description of how to use it, and it's a good program. You can actually formulate and mix your own diets, right? And what I mean by that, even if you have your animals on grass, it's absolutely worth it to get that grass tested and to get a dairy 1 result back and know at any given time point what am I actually feeding them, right? And then use those numbers on that printout and just plug it in a formulation program and see what happens, right? And there's also benchmarks given, so here's an example. That's how it looks like. You have your dry matter, crude protein, NDF, ether extract, that's the fat, the ash. Don't worry, there's extensive explanations, right? This is not half as scary as it looks like. And right here are suggested levels, and you see, those are your benchmarks. That is what you can reach. That's what you want to reach. And when you plug into that program, I'm going to feed them 3 pounds of this and then 2 pounds of that, right? The program will do all of this for you, right? And then you can just see, all right, I'm really off in my indigestible NDF. The hay that I'm feeding must be very old. There's a lot of lignin. There's not a lot of fermentable NDF in there. I'm really off there. I should do something about that. Maybe I'll have to feed them a better hay. Maybe I should, invest in a better hay. So that's basically what this can tell you, and I would really encourage you to do that. Okay, important for feed analysis is to do it frequently because feedstuffs change. Even if we buy, we had that problem, we bought pelleted feed from a feed mill, and we had a formulation, we had something that we wanted, right? When we went to them, we said, hey, this is the feed that we want, this is the composition of the feed that we want, and we got it back. And then we tested it with dairy 1. And the first week, it was completely fine, and as we moved through the batch, we tested it again, and it was off. Really, really off. So that's just to say, frequent analysis is good, because there's a high variability and assumptions can be possible. When milk drops, when productivity of the animal drops, most of the time, not most of the time, but many, many times it has to do with nutrition. Metabolic diseases, of course, yeah, and I said all this. Keep it simple and creative use of byproducts. There's so much out there. Apples, for example, if there's a little, factory that does apple cider, why not get their, what is it called, apple mash, apple?
Hummus.
Yes, exactly. That's a great cheap feed. Okay? It has to be formulated into a diet, and it can cause metabolic diseases if you overfeeding it. So definitely a nutritionist should be consulted at some point. But it's a great and cheap feed. You can you don't have to invest in a expensive pellet. You can feed citrus pulp, whatever. All these pulps, all these byproducts make great cheap feed. Okay, and then rotational grazing. This is my topic. I love grazing. I think sheep are great because they do so well in pasture. You can do great things and be very, very productive with sheep there on pasture. And you can't do it if your pasture looks like this. You can also not do it if it doesn't start your pasture looks like this. This is very, very mature. That grass is very old, over mature. There's a lot of lignin, a lot of indigestible fiber in there, not a lot of protein, not a lot of energy that animal can make out of this, right? This is a pasture that is less digestible. It has a lower nutrient concentration. It will result in a lower feed intake because all that indigestible matter in the rumen will clog the rumen, basically, and prevent them from eating more, so their feed intakes go down. And of course, you can't avoid this if you're a grazing operation, right? You cannot avoid this because you will hit a very perfect spring and all the grass will shoot up at the same time, and you just can't keep up with the grass, but you can't keep up with the grazing, and whatever is at the end of the line will look like this. But you have a choice. You can graze your dry use on that thing. You can graze your rams on it. You can graze animals there that are very low in productivity, right? As opposed to raising animals there that you're actually asking something from in terms of productivity. This here should never happen. Severely overgrazed. Also lower feed intake because there just isn't anything anymore, right? Inadequate nutrient concentrations, parasite pressure, internal parasites, worms. There's so much feces probably on that pasture that will be ingested by the animal. There's no chance that any parasite cycle can be broken here. This is bad. It needs a pasture renovation. I would assume this takes probably 3 years until it looks okay again. Reseeding, letting it rest, etc., etc. Overgrazing, is difficult because it has so many economic implications too, right? Deworming is very expensive. It's not good. This is how pasture should look like. It should be diverse. It should have several grasses, legumes, and forest species in it. My rule of thumb is 70% grass, 20% legumes, and 10% forest. Why forest? Forests are, for example, brassicas like kale and turnip, dandelion, plantain, forest chicory. Why? Because it's healthy. Right? The animals like it. The feed intake with forest in there will rise because it smells good and it tastes good. Right? And then the grass is there for volume, and the legumes are there for soil fertility and nitrogen fixation. So this should be diverse, and this is like a good rule of thumb. And the outcome will look something like that, and it actually makes a
Is that your guys' pasture? Is that the Cornell pasture?
No.
Ah,
No.
good.
Sadly, and to be honest, the Cornell pasture in some patches looks like that and makes me very sad. But it's out of my control, so I can't really do anything about that. But no, this is actually in Germany. It's a picture from Germany. Yeah. But cool season grasses, warm season grasses, annual grasses. Grasses are important because you'll get volume. You also want nitrogen fixation for soil fertility, and you want your animals to like what they eat. Palatability is important, especially with sheep. So of course, should be encouraged. Yes.
Compared to dead mixes to see pastures that are made up of this, is that a special sheep pasture mix?
You know what? That's a good question, and I don't know if there's a special sheep pasture. I doubt it.
It sounds like you might have to make up your own special blend.
Yes.
There are pasture blends,
Yeah.
but I don't know if they're specific to sheep.
I don't think so. Like, my guess would be no, but I might be absolutely wrong. That's
Most of
where,
them are geared toward dairy cows.
yeah.
Trouble with the annuals there,
Yeah.
once they graze them off and they don't reseed, that's it, gone.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
We're working on that right now. I'm not even kidding, that's what I was telling him about. We're trying to figure out how to get annual warm season grasses to persist on our rotationally grazed pastures. Because you're right, they can't. So I'm trying to grow them outside the fence, see if they can reseed themselves.
Oh,
our game plan is to rotate between the arrays.
Yeah.
Don't graze it to bare ground, graze it and let the other one grow up, and then bring the herd over there, let them graze over here, and let this one
We're
recuperate.
doing the rotational grazing course, March 6th in Ulster County.
Hey,
We can talk about that
that's an
forever.
HVADC thing,
Whoa,
man.
sorry.
I'm kidding.
But if you want to talk about, we'll talk about, he can talk about it all day too. That's what we talk about. Rotations, rests, recovery.
Yeah. So, my thing is to move them every day, once a day, and have rest periods of 6 weeks at least in between touching the same pattern, once a day, moving from the sessions. Right, and then we will get something that looks like this right here, or like this right there. It's beautiful, and that will make for great regrowth. There's not going to be a lot of parasite pressure. This is how it should be. I mean, this is how it's going, but it looks in the exact same way. And the best friend here is the flexible fencing, the electronet, regular switches of paddocks, 6 weeks to break the parasite cycle, up to 90 days with high parasite pressure. That's also a rule of thumb. It's worth noting. And then moving shade, shelter, and troughs if possible. Why? To minimize those manure accumulations and bald spots where no grass is growing. Avoid selective grazing. Avoid spot grazing. Minimize laneways and avoid spots or beetles. Those are just, I don't know, a couple of tips that work really well.
What about the cows in there, goats, or horses?
Yeah.
Horses take that kind of grass.
Yeah. So we went to the winter cleanup in Albany last weekend, and there was a woman who talked about multi-species grazing, and she has very, very good success with that. She did a thing where she had pigs in a pasture and resurrected the pasture with pigs before she let in, I think, sheep and goats. And I think her goats followed the sheep, or was it vice versa? I don't quite remember. She has calves, goats, and sheep, and they all go one after the other. So that's not really, I don't know very much about it, but I would absolutely try it and look into it because they all have different preferences. So you'll avoid accumulation of unwanted species because what the sheep doesn't want, the goat wants, and the cow. So it's good.
Is there a magic number of sheep per acre?
6.
6 sheep per acre.
So I have that number from Vermont. It was actually an Instagram page from Vermont, and they advise, or they have a regulation in one of their counties, maximum is 6 sheep per acre, and I did the math, and it's like, it works really well with what I learned in Germany. So 6 years per acre, and that means that you get your hay off of that too. So that includes everything.
That's not our evaluation. We want to keep it down with the arrays. But I don't want to, like you said, I don't want it to get bare ground.
Yeah.
So could we up that to 10 sheep per?
I don't know, because
Just depends on how fast you move them and how much you have to graze.
and what are the grass species, what are how does the pasture look like? So that's where, like, you just have to try it and look at what works. Because there is no one number that fits all of us, because every pasture is different. It depends on so many things. So my advice would be to just try it and start out with a higher density of sheep and moving them quickly if possible, and then just adapt.
Or you could do a pasture inventory and see how much forage you have, and that's the number of forage you have.
Well, the first year it's going to be fierce.
I'll get you a grazing stick, they're free. And they'll tell you, you can estimate how much forage you have in your paddock.
So this is 1 acre under ideal circumstances in our type of climate. And you said with hay,
Yeah.
so for winter hay?
Yes. So if you have 6 sheep per acre, then like you can get everything, pasture rotation and the hay, under a good range.
Depends on what vegetation.
Yeah.
It depends on, the year.
So that means that here, in the spring, when you have a huge flush, you're taking out a good portion, first cut, and that's in that calculation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's not intuitive.
We won't be able to do that.
Well, I don't know that it would be right for you, but it sounds, if you're a beginning person, says how many sheep should I have? Because 6 is probably a good number, they're not going to mess it up too bad. That's a good place to start.
All we could do is pre-seed it to a good mix.
Let's talk.
It's like Blanco's fields.
What's the pH?
It's around 7.65, 7.5.
You're fine, you'll grow. The seed bank is strong enough.
But eventually, the array is going to be there for 20 plus years, that acidity is going to go up.
Why?
Well, we got natural gravel there, and it just naturally, the acidity goes down, actually, the pH goes down, just naturally.
Well, we can talk after.
Yeah.
So I can talk about this stuff all day.
All right. Just a quick recap. There's few reliable markets established for raw sheep milk, and with few, I probably need know. So again, back to that problem of the missing link. It's easy to produce. It's relatively easy to sell, but there's no to sell the product. I mean, right? But there's no way to sell your raw milk. Why is that? Because the problem is the on-farm production, the small scale artisanal seasonal production, and that means that there's no consistent price established, and that all of this happens in like the high price segment. Right? There's no competition with what is imported from Europe. What is imported from Europe is comparatively so cheap that these small scale artisanal farms can't really compete unless they have their niche market established. And the challenge is, of course, the high investment cost. So you have your barn and your parlor, but if you produce on farm, you also have your creamery and your aging facility. I mean, aging facilities, they sit and rest empty for the biggest part of the year. They cost a lot of money because they're comparatively unproductive, right? You have your labor load and the cost of product. So it's like the challenge is the investment pressure of both lines of this business, the production and the processing. So the solution could be collaboration, and through collaborations with, let's say, 5 other sheep producers, achieving a detachment from production and processing. So if there's five sheep producers who maybe altogether have 500 ewes, they make a whole lot of milk, and if that happens year-round, they could invest in one creamery, right, and achieve using that creamery equipment actually to capacity. That's what Wisconsin did pretty successfully. They formed a cooperative, and that worked out well. And that's basically where I see the solution to the problem is going to be detachment from production and processing, and year-round production, and basically elevating the scale of the whole thing, moving away from small scale artisanal production to a higher scale, to like a cheaper product, and then maybe even achieve that with gateway products, to expensive cheese, which will be the yogurt. And speaking about yogurt and marketing, this is a really, really great example that I really like. Black Roll Creamery. They're in Trumansburg, New York, which is near Ithaca. You know them? No, we don't know them. We're from it. Oh, okay. All right. And yeah, it's a small-scale dairy owned by Lauren and Kevin McKinsey. They have around 130 owned acres and 55 acres of pasture. They're leasing 40 additional acres, and they have around 30 East Region dairy acres, right? And what they're doing is they're milking once a day. They're milking once a day. Last season, once a day. They're milking these 30 ewes for around 160 days per year. They're making fresh yogurt. That's the only thing that they're doing, and they're selling that yogurt in locally in the piggery, Green Star, all these local food hubs in Ithaca. They also sell yogurt via regional access to New York City, and they have 50 CSH dealers. How did they do that? They were on the phone. They cold called restaurants in the city, supermarkets. They did all their work by themselves. their marketing, they did that by themselves, right? And it's highly successful. They have a very recognizable label that right here was drawn by a local artist, and it's just very recognizable, right? And they had no professional marketing or branding strategy involved. It was all their own work, and they are highly successful. I just talked to their neighbors, and they just went to a 2-week vacation with a family of 4, with having 30 used multi-millions in it, right? So that's a real success. And like when I think about them, what springs to mind is that they're really consistent in their brand, their logo, their advertisements, and their availability. They are seasonal, right? But they are available. They're recognizable, clear associations, one product, one label. Yeah, just few focal points, recognizable. And they're accessible, even though they're seasonal. They're in stores, farmers markets. No, I don't think that they're doing farmers markets anymore, but regional markets, so they're always there. And they also have a website. And yeah, just, I don't know, when it comes to marketing, social media, I think we all know that is increasingly important, and it doesn't go without that. Instagram is a big help when it comes to marketing products. Okay. Yeah, I have 2 more slides. I just want to point out the economics of doing traditional versus accelerated dairy, right? I just want to point that out real quick. We have sample flock of 100 ewes with a cull rate of 20%. Per lambing, it's 1.8 ewes sold, and they weigh around 160 pounds and consume around 4.5% of their body weight in dry matter per day. Lamb sales with the traditional lambing, 1 time a year, 27,000 versus like an elevated number if there's 1.5 lambs, right? So the lamb sales are higher. So the cull ewe sales stay the same. The milk sales are slightly less here, right? And here we're calculating with 1 pound milk sold at $1.25 and an average production of 4 pounds per day. Why is this here less than that? Because in the accelerated lambing, we have around 140 days of milking per year versus 160 days of milking per year for the traditional system, right? So days of milking are fewer right here.
But they're really more, right? Because you're milking more through the year.
Yes, but
So there is a labor on this chart. Because labor is much more for accelerated, right?
yeah, it is.
So it's just
This
3
is
times
not
as
like
much?
this. You cannot take this and plug it.
No, so if we added, but if we could add one more column of labor, could we put like $50,000, let's just say $1,000 on traditional, and then it would be $3,000 in accelerated. It would be 3 times the labor to accelerate, right?
Yeah.
Roughly?
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, that might be, yes.
You really couldn't have labor with a traditional one because
Thank you. Yeah.
What do you mean?
How would you employ
it
someone?
would be seasonal.
No, on my time. I'm
Yeah.
counting
Yeah,
these.
your time definitely is higher,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So is it 3 times as much for seasonal, because I'm really milking 3 times a year?
Depends on the system. Depends, it could be, absolutely could be. However, like the point I want to make here, yes, you have an increased labor, and you also have, I did the math right here, slightly increased feed costs, right? But you have the advantage of producing year round. And what that in the future actually has, what kind of impact that will have on scale, on ability to sell product. It's
But the
not
successful dairy you showed us was a seasonal dairy, right?
that was a seasonal dairy. I'm not saying that it doesn't work. I'm like, this is a pitch of how the sheep dairy production can potentially in the future move from having everything on one side, production and processing, to going to establishing raw milk markets and actually at some point running. Because not everyone wants to, homestead farm on a 30-head sheep dairy. I think some people would like to have, would like to drive a really nice car or, that stuff. So if they're, yes, they're successful, but are they making like a lot of money? Probably not. So there's considerations. So, all right. So basically, what we can see is that as of right now, without considering labor, absolutely, there's not a big difference. There's not a big difference. Like that whole year-round dairying in the beginning doesn't mean that the difference in income is incredibly big, right? It's not. Maybe you make even less money if you take labor into consideration and if you actually could be very, very successful traditionally, right? That's the whole point. Like, I'm not saying that doing it accelerated year-round will save you all the grief and you will become millionaires, right? But it might be an important step to actually change the dairy industry, sheep dairy industry in the Northeast and in the future become more profitable through availability year-round.
Can I see
Yes.
the lamb sales? So, what do you think general sort of lamb industry eating in the U.S.? How much does that? I'm assuming it's meat from meat.
Yes.
So that's also like one qualifier for this to work, right? That you actually have a market for all this lamb to sell. So what do you think about that, the way it is now?
I think about that before you step into an operation like that, you got to make sure that you have buyers available, and I think that these buyers are there. I know that, for example, the Dryden Livestock Market upstate, they take lamb and they sell lamb, and there's people who are willing to drive to your farm and truck your 150 lambs twice a year to the New Holland sale. I'm pretty sure you can elaborate way better
I
on
think
that.
those numbers are pretty realistic. I mean, I'm brokers. I hope they are.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a $150 net on a 75 truck.
So, for example, if you have a farm that size, you wouldn't be processing at a specific place and marketing your own. Depending on how much labor you have, obviously.
Yeah, and also depending on what the market is. Like in Ithaca, for example, I assume that the market is bigger and better than it would be in maybe Canandaigua or somewhere, without a bigger city and without a diverse population. Like, I mean, we're also talking about the whole halal and kosher markets.
And the Jamaican dudes, they're all over here picking apples, and they will stop by your place and they'll buy almost anything you have as long as it has nuts. They want them intact. So you can get rid of those all day, as big as they can get, just not fat. They can be fat.
Yeah, so, being aware of all that and being aware of buyers up front. Okay, and just as a last slide, I like this slide because that's how I look at businesses, that's how I look at farm operations. It's always like I don't know. Whenever I look at my chores, I look at my tasks, and I look at them and I ask myself, is it enjoyable what I'm doing? Watering my animals, for example, right? Watering is a great example. Do I like watering my animals? Is it fun? Is it easy for me? Like, can I just go there and then pick up the hose and clean the bucket and water them? Is it enjoyable? Or is it bearable because I have to like drag the hose from the road to the barn and I have to like carry stuff? And it's not really fun, but it's bearable and I can do it and I'm not frustrated. Or is it really, really frustrating? Does my water freeze in the winter? Do I have a really hard time watering my animals? Do I have to carry buckets from the house to the barn? Blah, blah, blah. So assessing every task like that, is it enjoyable, bearable, and frustrating? And then going from this, actually looking at my work and then deciding what's my urgency of change. If I like doing something, there is no urgency. Maybe it will change in the future because maybe in the future I will buy a bigger barn and my watering system will change, right? So there's going to be eventually a change maybe in the future. If something's bearable, I should start thinking about it. Like, what am I actually doing? Is there ways to improve this? But it doesn't have to be right now. But if something is frustrating, it should change now, right? Because when something is frustrating, it takes out the fun, and if the fun's out, it's getting difficult. So frustrating things should change right now. And the plan of action, as I said, maybe in the future goes along with new investments, goes along with a system change. In the near future, it's definitely time to strategize and to think about and really think about like how can I possibly change my watering system to get like fresh water to my animals and how could this work better. And if something's frustrating, take action now. Consult with people, talk to people, search the internet, get help, change it now. And with that, I have a pretty good body of literature connected here. those publications, they're actually all valuable. They're worth the read. They're all in your handouts. And there's a couple of books when you're interested in grazing. I definitely think The Art and Science of Grazing by Sarah Flack is an incredibly good book. I advise everyone to read that. It's just a whole, it's a very good book. And then obviously Dave Thomas from Wisconsin has an extensive research body out there, always interesting. Olivia Mills wrote a very old, a book a while ago on TPB2, Practical Sheep Dairy. It's good, but it's more on the older side. The concepts, however, don't really change. And then there's a book, Sheep Nutrition Formulated Diets by my advisor, Mike Tony. It's also worth the read. It talks about fermentable fiber in diets and how to best feed sheep. And then I would like to advertise for our new site here. It's not up yet. It will be up in 3 weeks. It's all about sheep and goat dairying, actually. It's called Small Ruminant Dairy. And we have accumulated so many things about dairying on there. It's definitely worth to check that out. And if you're interested in nutrition and management of sheep for now, .eu is definitely a good place to look. And marketing for considerations about buyers and slaughterhouses and the whole USDA versus custom, that's the site to look. And if you have any questions, if not, I'd suggest a quick break.
Thanks very much. Put congratulations on the great job.
I actually have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So I guess we'll get going here. My presentation, I mean, part of this is a little bit processing side focused, which is going to be, key if you're going to process your own products, which in my opinion is really the only way to get started milking sheep at this point in time. But I'll probably try to talk a little bit more about, some more management stuff, than I had planned on, just because I think everybody here is probably just trying to learn a little bit more about managing dairy sheep, and Nico covered pretty much all of that, but I'll try to tie some of this in to more, farm side practices as we go along here. So, what is the history of sheep dairy in the U.S.? The history of sheep dairy in the U.S. is pretty short. This is a pretty relatively new and undeveloped industry in the U.S. It's one of the most undeveloped, it's the most undeveloped dairy industry in the U.S. Compared to goat's milk and cow's milk production. Before the 1980s and the 1990s, sheep's milk products were kind of where goat's milk products were, which is non-existent. The market really wasn't there for them. The visibility wasn't there for them. And when people started to try to market products like this, processing was a challenge or impossible because there's no market for fluid goats or sheep's milk. And so the first producers that new farm set producers where they were keeping the animals and managing the animals and milking them and making the products and marketing them. And that's how this whole thing got going. One of the first producers in the U.S. for sheep's milk products, I'm not sure if they were the first, but they were one of the first, was Tom and Nancy Clark up in Old Chatham with Old Chatham Sheep Herd Creamery. And I think that was 1993 they started milking sheep and producing products, and that was all getting sold in New York City. And the cities and the coasts have always been where these products were first sold because they have a very high price point, and so it's a very premium product. And so this is the first place that they showed up in the U.S. Once imported European cheeses had greater visibility, there was more of a market here in the U.S. because once people started seeing, like Nico said, manchegos and fetas, and they understood what they were and they recognized them, that's when the foundations were kind of set for being able to produce them with U.S. milk in the U.S. This is a map that I think originally came from Dave Thomas, who at the UW-Madison herd of dairy sheep. This was in a book published in 2008, and so it's not quite current, and I know for a fact that there's a few more producers on this map, than it shows here. But this is basically, every one of those dots is a known sheep milk producer. So there's a really big cluster up here in Wisconsin where there's a cooperative. Basically, the only sheep's milk, fluid milk cooperative in the U.S. is in Wisconsin. Do you know when that was started? There's a woman named Laurel Kiefer who started that, and there's, I don't know how many producers there are. There's a pretty good number of them, and that's where a cluster of producers are. Vermont, I don't know who half of these producers are right here in Vermont. There's a guy named David Major in Vermont who's got some dairy sheep. There's a few producers up in northern Vermont. In central New York, there's, I don't know, Mohawk Drumlin Creamery, they have a yogurt. There's a few, like the Black Pearl Creamery that Nico was talking about. There's us, Old Chatham, and a handful of other ones. I know out here, there's more than one producer on the West Coast. There's a couple producers. There's a producer I know of in Nevada. This one, I think this is Nebraska. There's a guy named Bill Helligan in Nebraska who milks about 700 sheep. And what he does is he produces milk and he freezes milk and sells it mostly to the West Coast. And we buy some of it here for Old Chatham, due to seasonal variance production. There's a couple other people that do that in the U.S. Back in the 80s and the 90s, that's what some people did if they really wanted to milk sheep, is they would milk sheep, freeze the milk. You can freeze goat and sheep milk because that has a high enough solids content where you can freeze it and then thaw it and process it into a product. So that has been a market. It is tough for a processor, obviously, because it costs a fortune to truck, 10,000 pounds of frozen sheep milk from, the middle of the country to a coast or, any great distance at all. And keeping the product frozen, if you're milking sheep seasonally and you're milking from March through September, and then you got to hold frozen product from the spring all the way until you market it in the fall or the winter, it costs a lot of money to do that. So that's, it's a tough business. But that's what a lot of people did. Up in Canada, there's a lot more sheep dairies. There's a much more developed dairy industry in Canada because in Canada, you can import genetics from Europe, which you can't do in the U.S. That's been since the BSE, hoof and mouth BSE outbreak. We stopped being able to import animals, and it stopped us from being able to import genetics into the U.S. So genetics is really the biggest bottleneck. One of the biggest. I mean, there's a few structural, bottlenecks in this business, but I mean, genetics is a real big bottleneck, preventing producers from being able to achieve high enough production to really make it a profitable enterprise. And so in Canada, they can import really good dairy genetics from Europe, which is where the biggest part of the worldwide dairy sheep industry is. They can get really good dairy sheep genetics, and they can produce more milk per animal and be more profitable. So there's more processing up there, and there's a more well-established industry up in Canada. Today, the market is more developed. There's more producers, but it's not to the point where there's an actual fluid milk market where you can go, like a cow dairy. You can start a cow dairy, and you can expect to sell your milk. You could start production and sell it to a co-op, sell it to any number of processors. It's not hard to sell milk. There's a lot of goat's milk out there. It's pretty easy to sell goat's milk. There's larger processors that have truck routes and that buy from a lot of different producers. Sheep's milk, if you're going to start milking sheep, you need to know where you're going to sell it. So either you're going to process it yourself, or you got to identify a producer that you're going to sell directly to, and you need to be pretty sure they're going to stay in business, because if you start milking sheep and they shut you off, you're up a creek a little bit. So the market is small, and it's not really well developed yet, and so that's another big challenge. But there are, like I said, there are more producers across the country, and so it's starting to be an industry that's grown to the point where there's organizations and there's some cooperation and shared knowledge and trying to improve milk production and strategies for marketing the milk. And so it's coming along. It's not quite there yet, but there's a little bit of momentum, and it's growing every year. So these are These are yogurts we produce in Old Chatham. Yogurt for us is the bulk of what we produce and sell. It's a really good product for us because we make it and it can go out the door the next day. And it's 100% yield. And so you take a pound of milk and you get a pound of yogurt and you put it in a cup and it's out the door the next day, and you don't have to hold it, you don't have to age it, you don't have to flip it and turn it, and it's a really good, it's a really marketable product too, because you really don't have to explain to many people, the characteristics of it, or any major special qualities of it. It's a pretty well-known product and people like it, so that's a really good product for us. Challenges, like I've been talking about, the milk market is a major one. Seasonality, milk production, component levels, like Nico had talked about. In the off periods of production for us, we milk our own sheep and use our own milk, but during the holidays, the need for milk is a lot greater because we're selling a lot more product, and so that's also the point of the year where the days are getting shorter and the sheep are producing less milk, and so it kind of is a crunch point. And so sometimes we'll purchase frozen milk, and it's something that we're eliminating, or we're bringing the herd up to the point where we don't have to do that. But it's the reality for a lot of people is that there's that seasonality and the crunch point between what you're selling and what the sheep are making. And so a lot of people freezing their own milk early in the season and then using it later in the year is a good strategy to get around that. For frozen milk, you can't use 100% frozen milk because there is a noticeable difference in quality. And so what we do, just no more than a third of the total milk for that product will be frozen. Is kind of the ratio we go by. That's important because if you make a product out of 100% frozen milk, you'll tell the difference. The quality will suffer. And so that's another challenge, if you're not producing milk year-round and you're going to try to freeze milk in the high season and then only use frozen milk when you're not milking sheep, that's probably not going to work so well. Milk quality is an issue, and this is like I was talking about, this is when I was thinking about more of a producer, processor geared presentation, but milk quality can be an issue if you're a processor and you're buying from, say, a lot of different small sheep dairies, and that's probably one of the reasons why there's not quite as much of a fluid milk market as there could be. The limits for somatic cell count in sheep's milk is the same as it is for cow's milk. It's 750,000 cells per milliliter. The limits for bacteria, again, is the same as cow's milk. It's 100,000 bacteria count. With goat's milk, the somatic cell count is double that. The limit is 1.5 million. That's because when goats lactate, they rupture their alveolar cells in their udder, and it's hard to differentiate when you're counting somatic cell count. So for goats, the limit is 1.5 million. For sheep, it's 750,000. Typically, that's not hard to produce under that, but if your flock doesn't produce a lot of milk, which is the reality for a lot of people, the less milk you produce, the more concentrated, the amount of somatic cell counts, the amount of somatic cells is in the milk, and your somatic cell count can elevate really quick. So during the lean season, if your flock is coming down in milk production, there may be a time where you could still produce milk and sell it, but your somatic cell count has come up high enough where you can't legally do that. And so there's some challenges going along with milk quality. The price point, this is also from the processing standpoint, one of the challenges, and I'll get to this a little bit later in the presentation, one of the challenges is that the price point for sheep's milk products are very high. So the store level for cheese, you're talking $25 to $35 a pound, and that's a price point that limits your market and limits how much product you can sell. Now, in the premium cheese segment, if you have a really good product, you can sell cheese all day long at that price point. If it's something that you market well and it's got the quality, that's a sellable price point, and you can make money doing that. you have to make a really good product and you have to market it well. It has to look good, it's got to taste good, it's got to have good packaging, and the whole program needs to come together. But if you could do all of that, you can sell, you know, a good sheep's milk product all day long at that price point. Sheep's milk products are sell well because they're a little bit of a rarity. Not as many domestic producers have them, and so a lot of cheese shops, a lot of stores, a lot of distributors want more sheep's milk products. But the price point is a little bit of a challenge because you can import sheep's milk products from Europe where the production is subsidized, in Italy and Sardinia and, you know, Greece, etc. You can import from Manchego for, you know, $8-9 a pound in New York, and that's about what the milk cost is for producing it in the U.S. So profitability, or, you know, looking at sales from that standpoint, there's a lot of challenges that do go along with that price point. So, you know, that's kind of the point that we find ourselves at with these products. What to make? So traditionally, the big one is Manchego style cheeses. It's a really hard dry cheese from Spain. It's delicious. That's what a lot of people know when they think of sheep's milk cheeses. Yogurts, that's another, you know, mainstay sheep milk product. You get 100% yield. It's a really good product to make and have in your mix. Bloomy rind cheeses. Bloomy rind cheeses are cheeses that are softer and they have white moldy rind around them, and that's like a camembert or a brie or a cheese similar to that. That's been a really traditional cheese that really makes well with sheep's milk. And mixed milk cheeses. This would be a camembert, is a mixed milk cheese where you have sheep milk and cow milk, or sheep milk and goat milk. These are really good cheeses to make because a lot of marketers, a lot of distributors, and a lot of stores like having a product that's got sheep milk in it, and they also like having the significantly lower price point that comes from mixing cow or goat milk into it. Sheep milk in the U.S. is about $1.25 a pound. If, you know, there is any little bit of a milk market, it's about $1.25 a pound is the price you get for sheep's milk, and people are selling frozen milk at about $1.25 a pound. Goat's milk is about, you know, more or less 50 cents a pound. Cow's milk right now is, you know, 13-14 cents a pound. And so using these different milk to mix with sheep's milk and make cheeses with is a really good strategy for both a producer and a retailer, and so it's a really good way to go with some of your products. It would be definitely wise to have one or more of these cheeses in, you know, a product makeup if you're going to be processing milk. New, less common products. This is a Hudson Hill. This is a creamery that's out on the West Coast, north of San Francisco, and they do ice creams. And they do really good ice creams, and that's something that's not as common. I can't think of a sheep milk ice cream that's marketed on the East Coast, and they do really well with this. I think they also do butter and some fluid milk. But the ice cream is one that's not so common. Spreadables, that's another product that's made and out the door really fast. Like a spreadable cheese is basically what they call lactic set cheese, which is not made with rennet, and so it's got a slow setup. You culture it and let it sit for overnight, and let the culture do its work, and it thickens up more slowly, and you don't end up with as hard of a cheese. And these are, you know, higher moisture content, so you get a higher yield on these products. And so that's a really good way to go is to introduce a product like that into your mix. Ice cream, like the Hudson Hill one there. Butter, that's a less common product you don't see as much. That can be something that you could approach a store with or a distributor with if you go that route and say, here, this is a product I have. There's no other product like it in this region. and that'll be really appealing to them. I do know for a fact that, I mean, this is a product that will have a home in the market. Yeah.
Is sheep smoke naturally homogenized like what smoke?
Yes. It'll separate a little bit, like if you let it sit overnight, but not much.
Because I look for goat's butter and it's also very rare.
Mhm.
And I'm told it's not as common because it's naturally
Because
homogenized.
it's naturally homogenized, yeah. So it's tough to make. It's a little bit tougher to make. And I didn't really, to be honest with you, I don't know the dynamics of making cheap milk butter with that homogenization. I know it's a little bit tougher to make, but it can be done. I think these guys do it. This is Great Dirt Farm. I think they're down in Missouri, and this is a spreadable product they do. This is something I included in here because I think they do a really good job with the product. There's, really nice pack. It's a great product. The flavors are good. There's just a handful of different flavors they do, and really nice packaging. And this is something they can make and have at the door, and it sells well, and it's appealing to a broader spectrum of people, than having really ultra, premium like a Camembert or something. This is something that comes and will live in a little bit of a broader section of the market. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on regulations because I'm not really qualified to probably give you, the end-all be-all answer on these. I'll just give you an overview of what the regulations are for processing milk. So for dairy producers, when you're milking sheep and you're selling a product from that milk, or you're selling that milk to a processor, you fall under the overview of Ag and Markets Division of Milk Control. And basically you need to be licensed when you start up and be inspected when you start up, and then you'll get inspected by a milk inspector twice yearly, and then occasionally you'll get inspected by a check inspector, which checks that the milk inspector is correctly inspecting your production. And there's, regulations that will cover the facility you're milking in, the facility you're raising your animals in, how you're cooling the milk, how you're handling the milk, how often you're shipping the milk. You can't ship no more than, you can't hold the milk for more than 2 days if you're a grade A producer. When you're processing the milk, you are considered what's known as a product dealer, which is how Ag and Markets categorizes you. And basically, you'll get, every 90 days you get inspected, and there's a list of different inspection procedures and control protocols for that fall under the overview of Ag and Markets. And so you'll basically have your point person in Ag and Markets, where you go to with different questions and issues, and that's who you interact with regularly as your regulator for processing. Labeling compliance is enforced by Ag and Markets. It's FDA labeling regulations or guidelines, but it's enforced by state Ag and Markets. So that's who you go through for that. So I'll just touch briefly on this. This is what's known as FSMA. It's the Food Safety Modernization Act, which is a very recent set of USDA or FDA guidelines that regulate all aspects of food production. And so this has been a big deal for processors because it has a much higher level of compliance needed than was needed in the past. And this is state enforced, but it's FDA rules. Basically, the short answer for what this is they require a very detailed and well record-kept plan for GMPs, which are good management practices. It's a set of, accepted guidelines for how you handle milk, how you produce your products, and how you store it, and personnel, how personnel plans for people get sick and whatnot. You need a HACCP plan. Basically, a HACCP plan is a plan that you have to always follow the GMPs. So a HACCP plan is a lot of temp logs and record keeping, and a lot of protocols that you have in place for any situation that may arise. HACCP stands for Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Points, and so basically what it is that you look at your processing flows and your product flows, and you identify the points in the system where there's the most risk of having a food safety issue. And then that's known as a critical control point, and so you have to plan for every critical control point of how the risk is going to be controlled. So basically, it's a very detailed plan for contingencies when problems arise in production and preventing food safety issues. You have to have a recall plan, you have to have a lot of different things that go along with that. There's really good educational resources that can guide you in setting up a dairy processing business as far as asset plans go, as far as processing goes, as far as navigating the road to producing milk products. Cornell Extension Harvest Program, New York Harvest Program is a really good resource. They have a lot of extension personnel that work with processors starting up, and they'll assist and they'll kind of give a roadmap and help you along. And they also do a lot of really good classes at the Cornell Dairy Plant that deal with sanitation, pasteurization, and basically, product making, anything that goes along with this business. So they're a really good resource. They have a lot of different things. Vermont Technical College has a small dairy processing course series, and they have a dairy plant, and they offer courses on cheese making, yogurt making, and a lot of different related topics as far as making dairy products. So they have really good courses there. Sterling College, they do a course partnered with Jasper Hill Creamery up in Vermont. You can go, and they have an instructor. I don't know if they have more than one. They have a guy that comes in from France and does a pretty comprehensive course on cheese making and different subjects. So they're a really good resource too. There's more than that. There's a lot of good resources in this part of the country for processing. So kind of to echo what Nico's talking about, beginning with goals in mind for your business. When you're going to sit down and decide if this is something I want to do or not, and what's this business going to look like, and can this support me? You got to decide what you want out of your business. Do you want this to be something where you can take a $40,000 a year draw and have it stay at the same size for a lot of years and support you and raise a family and get you out of your desk job? Do you want this to be something that's going to have enough income to reinvest in the business and grow and get a good return on your investment? Or is this something that you want to be able to do as a semi-part-time endeavor, which is tough to do with this kind of business? The financial viability of the business, the lifestyle, the challenge. This is a challenging business. There's no shortage of that. Do you want to be a farmstead producer? So this brings us to, I guess, my big point in this presentation, where I think that if you're in this climate right now, if you're going to start producing, if you're going to start milking sheep, you need to be making a product on the farm, because there's no milk market out there. And so, you can sell to a processor and market your milk. They're a little bit hard to find, so you got to identify one and approach them and talk to them, and then you got to be pretty certain that it's somebody who's not going to pull the rug out from under you. You're going to have a lot of milking sheep up and going. So I would say that in this climate today, you got to be making your own product. So to start with, how much do you want to take out of the business every year? How much do you want to live on if this is going to be your sole income? So you say you want to live on, $40,000 a year, and you sell 20,000 pounds of cheese a year. It's going to be $2 a pound in your production costs, and that's going to affect your price point. And so, if you produce 40,000 pounds of product every year, that's $1 a pound in your production cost. And so, when I think of a business, that's kind of the metric I use. Is what's the realistic expectation for how much money you can make out of the business and what it's going to be in reality as far as your cost of production. And does that cost of production match what the market will bear? Is that realistic? And so you take that answer of how much product do I need to sell, and then you figure out what your cheese yield is, and you figure out how much milk you're going to need to process every year. So if you're going to make 10,000 pounds of cheese, you got to process 100,000, well, sheep milk, you got to process 60 to 70,000 pounds of milk probably. And then you go and you say, how many sheep do I need to milk to get that much milk? And then how will I manage the flock, which comes back to Nico's presentation of, are you going to be seasonal, or are you going to milk all year round, and how many pounds of milk can you expect to get out of a sheep? You can expect to get 2.5 to 3.5 pounds of milk out of a sheep per day. And depends a lot on how you're managing them, but that's a pretty realistic expectation out of a sheep, during average production. Sheep, pounds of milk per sheep per year, 600 to 800 pounds, probably don't want to be too far under that. 800 to 1,000 is pretty good. 1,000 to 1,200, over 1,200, I mean, you're doing real good. You have good genetics, and you're feeding them well and managing them well. And so, I mean, if you're lambing once a year and everybody's in peak milk production, 5-6 pounds of milk per sheep per day is not hard to get. But then once you get to the later lactation part of the year, and everybody's making, a half pound a day, it's tough to, make and sell products. So that's stuff you gotta realistically consider. And so if you're doing a year-round breeding program, you take, average production and you spread it all across the year, and that makes it easier to make and sell products. As far as sheep milk production, and this is kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit on the farm side. The biggest bottleneck we have, if you're going to buy sheep, the biggest bottleneck you're going to have as far as what your flock can make in terms of milk production is going to be genetics. Like Nico was saying, most of the dairy sheep in the U.S. are kind of a mutt. They're a little bit of a mishmash of different genetics that, it's been the same family of sheep since the 90s, since we stopped being able to import genetics, and they've been bred with meat sheep, they've been bred with dairy sheep, and that's not necessarily to say you can't make milk and make money with meat sheep. You just have to manage them right. But I mean, the sheep that we have in the U.S. right now are a wide range of different genetics. And you're not going to have tip-top genetic dairy sheep. And so the silver lining to that is that sheep can improve their genetics really, really fast. And so if you look at the equation for genetic improvement, it's variance times heritability divided by generational interval. And so your generational interval is how long it takes a baby animal to have the next generation of animals. So for dairy cattle, your generational interval is 2 years, basically, 20 to 24 months, because you have a calf and then you can breed it at about a year, 11 to 14 months. And then 9 months later, you have the next generation. So you have a 2-year generational interval. Sheep, you have a lamb, and you can breed it at 6 to 7 months if you're managing it well. And then 5 months later, you have a lamb. So you got about roughly a year generational interval. So you can move the genetic progress on a flock of sheep twice as fast as you can move it on a herd of cattle. And that's a huge difference. Sheep also average twins. And so you can be better positioned to keep your best selection of lambs and still sell lamb and keep your very, very best. You're gonna have a greater amount of animals in your top whatever percent of the bell curve to keep the mules. And so those two factors make it very easy, very effective. You can very effectively move the genetic performance of a flock of sheep. And so if you're making good breeding decisions and you have an eye as far as what you want to see in your animals and you're consistent with it, you can really move fast with sheep. There's a woman in California that I worked with a little bit as a consultant. She was consulting for me. She has about 300 sheep, and she started, she's a veterinarian, and she started with kind of mutt sheep that didn't make much milk. And I think she tripled her average production per sheep in about 6 years, which is good. And that means that even if you don't start with the best sheep, you can expect to really move the needle in production and profitability if you have a good focus on what you're doing. So that's kind of what the point I wanted to make on the flock side. By the numbers. Okay, so this comes back to, that's the next slide. So if you're going to set up a creamery business, you're going to have a very high amount of capital costs. You're going to have a lot of lost capital, which is the difference between what you invest in capital expenditures and what it's worth on the books. And you know, a lot of lost capital with this stuff because, especially if you're buying new equipment, you're going to sink a lot into it, and you want to be sure that you really want to do it, because if you turn around and decide it's not the thing for it, you're not going to really recoup a lot of what you put into it. Facility. If you're going to do a new facility for a creamery, which really makes sense to do if you have an expectation of growing in the future, it can't be attached to the milking parlor. It's got to be separate, and you've got to have good drains in the floors. You've got to have a good floor surface and wash down walls. Work with Aggie Markets on this, work with Cornell Extension on that. Parlor, for milking. A sheep parlor is not that expensive. You can get the hardware for sheep parlor for $5,000-$10,000, $15,000 brand new. They're not that expensive. You can make your own. You can't milk in a wood parlor and sell milk to make products with. So that's a consideration. It's going to have concrete floors. It's going to have a concrete deck. It's going to have stainless steel. It doesn't have to have stainless steel. It has to have steel, metal hardware. Milk cooling. You got to invest in a bulk tank. You can probably use bulk tanks. Bulk tanks don't really break down too easy. They last a long time, and so you can buy a good old used bulk tank that was good for a farm in 1950 and doesn't hold a lot of milk. So it's good for a sheep farm in 2018. Milk holding, that to do with your parlor setup, bulk tank. Cans are not realistic. That's a grade B product, and that's not. I'm not going to go into that. That's not realistic. A vat for processing milk, pasteurization. You can make raw milk products. You have to age them for 60 days. That gives a. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. If you really want to do it, you can do it. It's going to be tough on your cash flow, and I would recommend, looking at pasteurization. Vat pasteurizers. That's a pretty good investment. That's another pretty good investment. Product storage, cooling, space, square feet to store stuff in. Used equipment generally is pretty decent. It's a lot of stainless steel, and it doesn't really get too flimsy, and it's a good way to go if you're going to start to do a business like this. Cost of goods, milk costs, market price is about $25 a pound. At 50% cheese yield, that's $8.32 a pound. Cost of production at 17% yield, that's $7.35 a pound. 20% yield, that's $6.25 a pound. You can import European sheep cheese for this much per pound. So that's what you're competing with. So talking about differentiating the process, but starting to put those numbers together. Now, if you're processing your own milk, obviously. You could say, okay, I'm going to make the money on milk and the sheep, and that's going to be the profit center. And you sell the milk to the creamery, and you don't make very much processing the milk, you make it on milk and the sheep, or you could do it the other way around. But the margin on these products is tough to do if you're going to buy from a farm at that price point, and then have your processing costs and sell it and still make money. It's tough. So that's a tough thing. If you're milking sheep and you're going to go to a processor and talk to them about those products. Mixed milk cheeses really help with that. You got the cost culture, salt, labor. Aged cheeses, like I said, obviously more challenging from a cash flow point of view. If you're going to make your product and then hang on to it for 8 or 12 months, you're not seeing cash flow from it for 8 or 12 months. That's a really hard thing to do. So if you're going to make those cheeses, you're probably also going to have like a yogurt or a fresh cheese, in your mix. Marketing. So if you're producing your own product, these are going to be probably workhorses for you because you're going to capture 100% of the retail price for that. If you have a farm store, if you're going to farmers markets, you're going to capture 100% of the retail price point. If you're selling to stores and restaurants, you're going to capture half of what they're selling it for. Distributors, you're going to be selling a lot of product really to, there's some regional distributors like Provisions in Vermont that will will deal with small volume producers. If it's a really good product, they'll buy it and sell it. But you're going to be selling it to them for half of what they're going to be, tack 20% on for the distributor and then 50% on for what it's going to end up being in the store. And that's, the reality of it. So if you go through those avenues for marketing, you got to sell a lot of cheese. You really got to, move a lot of cheese to make it work out. Obviously, labeling and image, that goes into producing, the whole picture of a good product. If you're gonna compete with that price point, you got to have a good label, a good image, and a good product. And what I mean with this is, if you're a farmstead producer, this is a good enterprise that can fit in, the larger farm enterprise. If you're doing other product, if you're selling meats, if you're doing farm stays, if you're marketing your farm as a farm, this is a good way to integrate that into the whole big picture. This is Haverton Hill ice cream out of California. With that sheep's milk ice cream. They have an ice cream truck and they do weddings and events with that. And I don't know how much they make with that, but it's a really good idea for creative distribution, marketing, and selling product. And in conclusion, the market for sheep milk products in the U.S. is very strong due to differentiation. If you have a good product, people want sheep milk products right now. Farmstead direct marketing models are the most workable from the perspective of a new producer. Just to capture that 100% of the retail dollar and bring it back to you is important if your production starting out is low. Initial capital cost is high. Obviously, you're going to understand that, but to keep that in mind, if you're looking at this business versus other businesses, pricing is a challenge. That price point is a challenge, and you have to do a good job at differentiating your product against others. Just do your homework and see, what other products or similarly run products out there. And then managing the sheep to play in a breeding season that eliminates the seasonality from your milk production is also key if your business is one that you want to grow in the future significantly. I think that's it.
Okay. A couple of questions on the quality of the sheep milk. To my knowledge, I've never had any. Is the butterfat content much different than dairy cow?
It's a lot higher. It's 7-8% fat. 6 to 8% fat.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's about twice as
And
much.
what's the taste? Is it more creamy type of taste?
It does. It tastes like ice cream fat in a way.
It's a little bit more tart, like oat's milk.
So it has more lactic acid in it.
I don't know.
That's the acid generally in milk.
Yeah, it's high solid, so it's a pretty thick milk, and it's got a really good mouthfeel. And typically you don't get an odor like you do with goat milk. You don't get like goat milk, you kind of have like a goat flavor, and you really don't get that with sheep
It's more of a processing milk than it is a fresh drink.
It's a great fresh drinking milk though. It does.
What were you saying about 60-day wait after it's processed? What's that all
Oh,
about?
so if you're not I'm sorry. So if you're making dairy products and you're making raw milk cheeses, so if you're not pasteurizing it, I don't honestly know the specifics of selling raw milk in New York and varies state by state, but if you're making a dairy product like a cheese, if you're not pasteurizing it, you need to age it for 60 days, which is beyond the,
So all the fermentation's done.
right, the growth phase of, if you have like a steely age or something like that. So, but it's a great drinking milk too.
You should be able to find full jobs, but this is something like
Yeah, but we don't bottle milk. And that's one of the things that we, thought about a little bit, but I don't think you can get a bottled sheep milk in the East Coast.
Is it illegal to sell it raw?
No, I guess the short answer is no. New York's got certain rules for selling raw milk, and I couldn't tell you what they were exactly. You can do it. It's either got to be, I think it's got to be under a certain amount per day selling off the farm. And each state is a little bit different with their rules. But, the upside, I think there's a lot of, there's definitely demand for raw milk sales. The downside is you open up yourself up for a lot of liability, So I'm not going to make a judgment call on it.
It's regulated the same way.
It's right, yeah, the state regulates it, yeah. So, anything else? There's a market there, and there's a lot of challenges to doing it that you don't really
Why
find.
can't you, if you have a surplus, why don't you sell it to a dairy processor and blend it in the increased butterfat content? I mean,
It's probably cheaper to
the
just
whole
buy.
state's not produced for nothing for butterfat.
Yeah,
That would be a market. I mean, we would be selling it as
Yeah.
sheep milk, but you've got a market there for somebody to take it at least.
I mean, there's a market for processing it though, and then you capture, and someday, like Nick was talking about, someday hopefully, and I think this will happen, is that we're actually going to have, a food milk market so people can produce and sell into the market, milk co-op like they have in Wisconsin. And that'll make it a lot more workable for people to produce that milk. A big challenge that needs to be overcome before there can be a really strong fluid milk market for sheep's milk is that per animal production needs to come up a lot because the cost is so high, and if,
Actually, that just came to mind. One thing I did hear Peter talk is what it takes to actually milk a sheep. I mean, are you doing it by hand? Are you doing it mechanically? Like, how are you getting the milk out of the sheep?
mechanical. You can do it by hand.
I'm sure you
It
can.
takes a long time for a little bit of it.
Similar equipment to.
Similar equipment, yeah. You basically one pulsator can run 2 milking machines because it's just a 2 teacups, and so a little bit different settings than cow pulsation, and you got to be really on top of parlor cleanliness because you got a lot of machine attachments for the amount of milk you have, so there's a lot of opportunities to get bacteria in, for the amount of milk you have. I mean,
Get closer to the ground.
dilution is the solution to pollution, so cow dairies, it's not as big of an issue because they're making a lot more milk than a sheep is, but if a sheep, you're making this much milk and you have a lot of, machine attachments for that, you gotta watch that. This is the parlor we have at Shepherd's Way. So we have a double 50, so there's 50 stalls on each side, we milk 100 sheep at a time, which is basically the same parlor you would have for a small sheep operation. It would just be a lot shorter, you'd have less stalls on each side, but really, compared to a cow dairy, a sheep dairy, or a sheep parlor costs nothing.
And all this equipment is included in that 15,000 we're talking about?
Don't quote me on that.
I mean, I know it's a lot.
What I was talking about is the hardware, but you could you could have somebody weld, if you're milking 100 sheep, you could have a double, 10 parlor welded up, and you could do it really cost effectively. It wouldn't break the bank. The parlor is not going to be the main cost of it. a milking unit for a sheep. You know, the inflations in the cups are pretty expensive. You're probably talking about $20 a unit for those, or more. They're really expensive. What you can, well, what we did with goats is we used cow liners, but sheep have a much smaller teat, and so you'd be iffy doing that. You can do it, but it'd be tough.
Is it at all cost effective to import the machinery? I mean, if you can't import the genetics, but can you get the...
A parlor?
seeds?
Yeah, the parlor shepherd's way capability by way of Canada. It's a company in Canada called Green Oak that we got it through. Honestly, if you really just, you can get a pretty good parlor made by a welder. You know, if you go to look at another sheep parlor, or even, I mean, you can buy, you know, used sometimes. A goat parlor is really similar to a sheep parlor, except goats are a lot narrower than a sheep, you know, so, you know, they're similar though. But the equipment's not that hard to find. You'd be surprised.
There
Yeah.
is a supplier, it's called Hamby, Hamby, Hamby
Dairy
Dairy Supplies, and they have milking equipment for both goats and sheep. And their catalog is actually pretty expensive. We bought all our equipment at Canal from there, and they're really good.
Yeah.
So with the milking equipment, I would imagine you really have to keep on top of things more often.
Yeah, you gotta clean after every milking. And then like every, you know, once a week you go and scrub a parlor or something like that. But you know, if you have a milking system, you're gonna have a CID system, so you just, it machine cleans itself. You know, so it's not too,
The sheep have a mastitis problem also as constant.
very low incidence of mastitis. So, you know, we're milking, you know, 2,000 sheep, we saw a couple cases a month. I mean, it's very low incidence. And what you'll see more often, you don't see like a clinical mastitis as often as you see an elevated somatic cell count. But like an actual clinical case of mastitis, more often for us it would be, you know, the only ones that we, you know, really ended up being a clinical case was like a gram-negative, like an E. coli or a Klebsiella, which is, you know, would usually end up with a mortality, but very, very seldom. They've got pretty tight TNs, and
So next, I think it's 2 weeks from now, there's going to be a site visit?
yes, at Old Shannon Brewery.
At your,
Yes.
what's the address?
155 Shaker Museum Road in Old Shadow. It's 1226.
And it starts at 6 as well?
I don't know.
It does, I'm gonna send out an email with the confirmation on that.
6 p.m.?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
same deal, it's just on site.
Yep.
February 15th. I believe Marianne or Todd will be there for that.
Anything else, Nico?
Right on time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. It makes a great yogurt. I mean, it's you know, like with a goat yogurt, to make a yogurt that consistency, usually you have to use thickeners. You gotta use like a pectin or a Star Trek or something. But I mean, sheep's milk yogurt, it's like a Greek yogurt consistency, but no thickening. I mean, it's just, that's the way it is. It's
I use
great.
it as a substitute for sour cream.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I mean, and fluid sheep's milk. So, I mean, that's something I didn't really even, if you give me 5 minutes here, I didn't really even talk about that. But I mean, as far as marketing a fluid sheep's milk product, that would be, you know, probably a really good hole to fill in the market, since you can't get one here, and there's a lot of health benefits to sheep and goat milk both. But I mean, sheep milk in particular, it's got very small lactose molecules. So typically, if you're lactose intolerant, you don't have a problem with sheep milk. It's also hypoallergenic. There's a big industry of making infant formulas from sheep and goat's milk both. They put I don't know if it's built yet or not, but they're putting a $200 million powder plant up in Ontario for goat's milk. for infant formulas because you can make a really clean product. And it's naturally hypoallergenic and you don't have the lactose intolerance issue. But high in solids, high in fat, high in protein. By virtue of the composition, it's low in lactose for the amount of the other solids. It's a great product that can be marketed really easily as fluid milk. And there's nobody in this area doing that, so that's an opportunity.
Makes better cake.
Yeah, makes exactly. So, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all for coming. Before, I know Todd and Mary, I look forward to seeing you at the site visit on the 15th. If you have any questions about it, shoot me an email. I'm going to send a confirmation out about it probably middle of next week, so you have all the details, your address and everything will be right in there. And any questions, just let me know. Thank you for coming. Have a good evening. Safe travels home.